is going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Tapped In Indy Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Heath Mulligan, joined by Nick McDaniel. Nick, it was a pretty eventful weekend, but we did not get out to a lot of shows. But how you doing this morning, my brother?
Doing good, man. Lots of notes obviously going through, and we did something a little different yesterday. I put out a request for some fan questions, got those, figured we would mix it up a little bit. May do that a little more going forward, so kind of keep an eye out for that. I'll try to do better. Maybe we'll announce it the week prior, and then we will have it versus being a last-minute thing. But yeah, man, had lots of family stuff this weekend. Had it, I have a daughter of mine who's got 5 kids. Rarely did we ever get to have dinner with just her and her husband. We had an opportunity to, pop up at last minute on Saturday. So it was like, had to pass on the shows and do that instead. So, priorities, I guess. I know that sounds funny on a wrestling podcast maybe, but so I didn't do any shows this weekend, but it's kind of a moment I wanted to say thank you to all of the people that, send in the recap stuff, that send in so we can put the wrestling spotlight, Georgia Wrestling Spotlight, all that stuff together. I appreciate everybody who participates in that.
That's right, fans. And if you want to see all the stuff that's sent in and compiled into our notes, you can see all the notes by going to patreon.com/tappedoutpod. You can join for free. That means you're going to get the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight every week. But if you join at a paid level, you're going to get access to those show notes and lots of other great stuff on there. Again, that's the only place you can get the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight, where we're talking about all the wrestling shows that just happened and those that are coming. And that's also a great place if you want to send in a question for the show. You can do that through Patreon. You can comment on all the posts, or you can email us at tappedoutpod@gmail.com. As always, thanks to everybody watching on YouTube. Make sure you hit the like button if you haven't subscribed. If you found us because we were a suggested video, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell to get all the notifications. Nick, speaking of turning the notifications on, we got the notification Saturday night that Next Level Championship Wrestling bounced back pretty well in episode, their second show, episode 2. Episode 1, little less than 100 people there, or right around 100. This show, 191. And from all reports, both in front of the curtain and behind the curtain, things ran much more smoothly, and they seemed to be kind of getting their feet under them.
Yeah, I mean, look, we knew, because remember the dates, the original dates got moved, and that caused some booking issues on the first show, which probably, one of the statements made is it probably wasn't the show they wanted to put on at episode 1. They right. lost some talents and things like that, whatever, because of the dates moving or whatever. So maybe, here's the hypothetical, maybe this is the first show we got the 100% the vision of Ace Haven and, what Josh Fields were looking to do. And, look, we talk about trends. That's something that I always tell people. I don't get hung up on you drew X, you drew Y. It's like, hey, let's look at you over the stretch of a couple months, and I'm a few, not back to back. 2 shows does not make a trend, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I need to see a little more data in the long term. But you're heading in the right direction. So here's the thing. My argument was, if people were trying to argue, well, was it promotion or was it product or whatever that gave the number for the first show? I shrug my shoulders and go, because it clearly brought back the people that watched it.
Yeah.
Those people liked it. They came back.
Yeah.
So now your hopes is the show, we're going to deep dive into it, on the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight, but clearly now we're seeing a little, we're seeing the direction of the, of the booking, and the angles are starting to play out a little bit. We're seeing, we got our first, I always say we got our first little fire of heat lit. So we kind of see that. So now we'll see the trend of, like, is the booking heading them in the right direction? But my big thing was kudos to them for, hey, look, they caught some flack around, and, and a lot of whatever. And I was like, we kind of made the comment of, we know Josh Fields well enough to know that, like, look, he's not going to just oh well, I guess I should just lock the doors and walk away. It's like, hey, he put his nose to the grindstone and chipped away
Yep.
at it, and like, hey, we got progress. We got literally when Larry's putting out there a report, like the stories are better, the angles are better, things are more defined, crowds better, blah blah, all these things above. Even like he repositioned things in the arena to make it look and feel a little better. You know what I mean? Like those are the kind of things that you're like, okay, we tried something, we made some mistakes, we got it, and then to go out there and fix it, which is why we felt like they deserved a little bit of a little love here, going like, hey, recognize what happened and just fix it. That's all you can do.
Right. And there is no, if Next Level settles into that 175 to 225 crowd range, that in 2025, that makes them right near that top level of promotions. We've seen just with the trends, there's some shows that have popped some big numbers, but we've seen overall the average crowd going down a little bit. Now that there are more promotions, so I'd be interested to see the numbers like overall, like are we drawing as many fans as we were 2 or 3 years ago. But yeah, kudos to Fields. They also, you mentioned they had to change the date. They also had to change the venue. So
correct.
I mean, they had plans for how they wanted to do it in that other venue in Augusta. Of course, Josh Fields is very familiar there with the American Legion building. But it does appear they got back on track. I think the biggest hurdle or obstacle Ace Haven has is they're introducing a lot of non-Augusta talents, not even non-Georgia talents. I mean, there's, as we're looking over the results, there's several folks on there that even we're not as familiar with. And so it's going to take some time to introduce these wrestlers into to that audience and into Georgia wrestling. And again, we're 2 shows in. It's going to see the trend. It's going to be, summer, late summer, and then we'll kind of know where Next Level is going to land.
Yeah, and it smart of them to use a familiar tool or two, out of the toolbox right out of the gate to be your big, with the All-Star and the hierarchy, like bringing in some familiar, like to be the top while you bring in the new pieces and kind of introduce them along the way. And by the way, using one of those pieces, the All-Star special, to introduce a new, somebody new to not necessarily the area, but to your promotion.
Here's a question, and I don't know if you want to talk about this now or on the other show. The biggest question coming out, 2 big questions coming out of this show. Number 1, can you maintain this momentum, build on this momentum? Number 2 is if you heard fans, if you read Larry's report, there's some controversy with Skrilla. Skrilla was at the show, did not wrestle, left the show early. If Skrilla, or was Skrilla booked, I'm sure Ace has kind of booked this thing out. What if he was a big part of your plans? Are you now having to
adjust?
And how much is that going to affect things, especially if Skrilla was going to be,
a centerpiece? Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
That's right. But that's what makes a good booker, is if you can adjust like that.
Yeah, and we're, look, maybe we'll find out, maybe we won't. We'll, whatever. I mean, that stuff. But listen, let me back up. We will figure it out, like on the next show. If Skrilla's fit back in, he's a major player, whatever. If they adjust on all that stuff will be seen. The other stuff, I don't know. It's one of those, like, maybe we'll find out. Maybe we'll find out, talk about it. Maybe we'll find out, won't talk about it. I don't know. That's a whole other that's a whole other thing.
Maybe we'll talk about it behind the paywall on Patreon. Who knows? Another thing we wanted to talk about is several weeks ago, Wrestling with Edits, a.k.a. Dustin Frymeyer, put out
Dylan, but yeah,
Dylan, Dustin, Dusty. Sorry about Dustin. Who the heck is Dustin?
You saw Dusty over my shoulder, so that was what.
Oh, Dylan Frymeyer put out Wrestling with Edits the offer. Hey, let's build you a video resume. We've seen a couple of these, but if you are a wrestler and you are on the fence about this, they just put out the one with Bryce Cannon. And Nick, this thing was absolutely fantastic.
It's yeah, okay, yes. Let's start with the video itself. Yes, because what the video does is something that I think a lot of people talk about. To me it's a huge thing that I talk about in wrestling in general. Everyone's worried about being the greatest wrestler, in the world. That's what they're all trying to chase. And I understand that. And I understand that you would want to do that. But wrestling is all about storytelling and characters and, people buying, believing in you and emotionally connecting with you. And to watch the video, you see like, oh, he's doing, there's some action shots. They're in there doing some video of, some moves or whatever. But you connect with Bryce Cannon because he's telling his story, and there's video like matching it up and things happening. It's done extremely well. And for anybody to be shocked, I'm always kind of like, do you not know who Dylan Frymeyer is? Like, do you not know what he does? Like, he has done some things for AEW that you've watched on TV that you probably didn't have a clue that he did. But he did lots of video packages for guys like Ricky Starks and like some of the Sting stuff when he was there. I mean, it like that by far is one of the absolute best available tools in Georgia for you. That if you're not using your bananas, because look, I know Skrilla. I know him. I was like, hey, I've talked to him pretty regular, right? But when I saw his video, the one that they did for him, I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. Oh, that's cool. And so, again, it's that little bit of like you connect a little more when the story hits home. But it's also cool for promoters. To me, here's one of the things. Promoters see you get it. Like you didn't just send them like, hey, here's a highlight reel of me hitting 100 different cool moves.
Right.
Yeah. Because you know what? There's a lot of the guys out there. Believe it or not, there's a lot of guys like that. But there's only one Skrilla. There's only one frat daddy Bryce Cannon. You know what I mean? Like, tell them why it's you that matters and not just because of the moves you can do.
Yeah, because literally anybody can do moves. But to be able to do the moves and tell a story and captivate an audience, that is the secret. And if I'm being honest, that's one of the things we're missing in independent wrestling. That's one of the things we're missing in movies. Something captivating. I mean, a lot of movies, a lot of independent wrestling is just like, yeah, okay, all right, that's okay. It wasn't bad, but it didn't captivate me. It didn't. You're trying to captivate people, motivate people into laying their money down, their hard-earned money down in a hard economy to buy a ticket, to buy merchandise. And you got to be able to connect with the audience. And these videos are just a phenomenal way for wrestlers not just to connect with other promotions, but to connect with an audience and really compel people to be like, now I want to see this guy. And so kudos to Dylan Frymeyer for the work he's doing. And one of the things is Dylan saw that he had this skill. It's a marketable skill, and he's doing it to make money. And if you are an independent wrestler, you're going to like this segue, Nick. We talk about merch all the time. And you and I think it was last week or week before, we talked about different merch ideas.
Okay.
And now we're putting our money where our mouth is. And Nick, over the weekend, you kind of got the itch. You had time with family, but also had time at the house. And Nick, you have designed some really amazing artwork. And if there's a wrestler listening, how can they find out about this to add something really, really cool to their merch table?
So you're obviously the tapped out collectibles division. Everybody asks me, how is there a collectibles division? Well, obviously I do the comic books on eBay and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and that's the name. That's literally the name of the eBay stores, tapped out collectibles. It's all done for business purposes. You could probably put the two and two together. It makes it easy for taxes. But yeah, so last week when we talked about it, I started tinkering around with it a little bit and was like, hey, this is something that I can do, and I worked on it and worked on it, and I understand, like, there's some people that are like, well, what you're using the tool. I'm like, yeah, go figure. Anyway, I'm not gonna get on my soapbox on that, but yeah, um, it's a cool concept. I thought, like, I'm gonna start with comic book covers. That was kind of the opening thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've put a few of them out there. I know a couple of the guys. Look, we did a few orders over the weekend. Believe it or not, guys, if you want to ask about turnaround time, ask the one guy. One guy ordered his, I believe, on Friday, and it showed up at his house yesterday.
Yeah.
I try, I'll bring them to shows and deliver them hand to you. It's prints, it's everything. It's all you literally pay, and I just hand you the product. You put it on your merch table and sell it, and it'll look different. And somebody said, well, what's the advantage over an 8x10 poster? I'll design a new one every time. So you start with your issue number 1.
Mm-hmm.
When we do the second run, it's issue number 2, and number 3, and number 4. So you can kind of keep it different, and they'll always be different, because the argument that I made to somebody was, with an 8x10, no offense, the action may look a little different, your pose will be a little bit, but it's the same. It's that I'm going to give you a different image every time. You're going to get a new cover every time. So even the 10, 15, 20 people that buy everything of yours, the next time you show up, they're going to buy more because there's new ones. It's not you're like, hey, I'm selling through those 8x10s or whatever. Like, no, we could just keep making you new ones. So that's kind of the plan and theory. I felt like we talked about merch enough about guys like you said. I wanted to put my money where my mouth was. Like, hey, here's an alternative. It's not super expensive. The margins are crazy. I think they're really good.
Yeah.
So, and that's a whole conversation. But you can email us, tappedoutpod@gmail.com, and ask about it. You can message me, T.O. Nick McDaniel on Facebook if you want to, whatever. I've created a Google form for them to put the order in. I'll send them the link with the pricing, and they decide what they want. They just put the order form. I decided on the order form just because it'll put it in. I'll process them as they come in the orders. It's just the fairest way to do it, so I'm not bouncing around. I'm literally just, as I complete each task, I'll just go to the next one, and that makes it simple for me anyway. So, but yeah, man, check them out if you haven't seen them. A couple posts put up, and I got a feeling you'll probably see posts, every couple days. I'll be putting something up with some, especially when I do new ones, that you can kind of see how things are evolving, and because here's the thing, it's totally customizable.
Yes.
You're going to tell me what vibe you're looking for, what theme you're looking for, the word, all that, and I'll just take care of it. So anyway, but yeah, I think it's cool.
And people can see from the ones you've posted, like the one for Cruel, a totally different vibe than the one you had for Carly Bravo. Totally different than the image you had from you and QT at Turnbuckle. And you and I, just in our brief conversation last night, we were just talking about just the options, the options that wrestlers could have. You got variant covers, you got there's other, I don't want to give away all our ideas, but like, this just the tip of the iceberg. And,
yeah, I mean, I've already expanded
cool.
it, by the way, because it was originally for one weekend, it was 4x6s and 8x10s. I think now I'm actually going to make it 5x7s and 8x10s instead. And one of my goals, believe it or not, Heath, I'll also say this one on the air to surprise you, I'm contemplating like doing some trading cards. Where you can order your image in a trading card and sell them or something like that. So we'll see. I mean, like 100 trading cards for $100, you sell them for $2 a piece and double your money, something like that. Who knows?
Yeah. And one of the things, there's been a lot of different wrestling trading cards out there. When we had, when I was a part of SOS Custom Tees, they had Ricky Morton. We had Ricky Morton. We had the tights he had wore, I believe, at Survivor Series. And so we had patch cards with that stuff. So there's a lot of different things you can do. But even like what you put on the back of the card, like, it could be the tapped in scouting report or something like that. That would be something pretty cool. And but anyway, just a Again, we talk about merch.
Oh,
If
I
you're
do.
still,
I want to. Sorry,
yeah,
there's one thing I got to clarify. By the way, I have had a couple people message me. I'm not selling individual like posters and pictures. Like this is set up more so for me selling to the wrestlers, to the promotions or whatever, for them to sell. Somebody was hitting me up like, "Hey, I want to order one of the, the CB Suave ones." I'm like, "Okay, well then you got to get with CB Suave because I'm
right.
not the one selling the individual
Yeah.
ones or whatever." So I just wanted to be clear for the people, the non, the fans and this listening. That's if you want some done of your favorite wrestler, go to your favorite wrestler and tell them you want them to get some.
Yes. Um, yeah, just a really cool, these are going to be really cool collectibles. And I think if I'm a fan, what most of the time you go to a merch table and they may have like 6 different 8x10s or pictures you can buy. But it's really like I've often said, once I've got somebody's autograph, there's really no need to get it again. But if you're telling me that I can collect all these issues of my favorite wrestler, $10. That's a pretty cool thing. So I am excited to hear, excited to see where that goes and hear more about that. Let's jump in to the first edition of the Tapped In Mailbag, the fan questions that were sent in via Pony Express, email, Patreon, and various things. Jake from Athens asked, this is a great one. If you could take one wrestler from any Georgia promotion and put them somewhere else, who are you picking and why?
So here was my question. I wanted to ask you this. So Jake, I appreciate the question, but I'm going to ask are we talking about putting them in another Georgia promotion, or are we talking about putting them?
Ooh.
You see what I mean? So that might change my answer.
I
Um,
think, I don't want to speak for Jake. I think he's thinking Georgia promotions. And so as I was thinking about this, so many Georgia wrestlers wrestle multiple promotions. And so that makes it a little more difficult. But I'm trying to rack my brain. But who are some talents you'd like to play fantasy draft with and move them around?
I think there's not, because like you said, there are so many that wrestle in so many places. Um, the ones that stand out the most that don't, like Gunnar Miller, only
Mm-hmm.
wrestles at Southern Honor.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, what would he be in Coastal or Viral or, uh, where he fits to me? Bullpen. He's more that old school. So you know what I mean? That probably works. So like him at a bullpen, something like that. When you talk about other guys, like I said, everybody seems like they, for the most part, kind of work everywhere. So am I wrong that's why he just stands out probably the most?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he for sure, definitely stands out in that way. Um, yeah, I mean, there's so many really, really good talents. I mean, I would love to see. Man, can you imagine a Gunnar Miller? I mean, talking outside of Georgia, a Gunnar Miller in an AML up in Winston Salem. I think that's what I would really love to see is who are the people always talk about the talent across state lines. And if I'm sure if you talk to Robert Truesdale, Redbeard in South Carolina, and a couple of other folks who do a lot of shows between North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, there is for sure a distinct difference in talents. And I think people always try to brag, well, Georgia talent's better than North Carolina talents. I just think it's just interesting to me to see that crossover. I think too many times it's almost like DC and Marvel that there's no crossovers. I mean, or if there is, it's like once every 20 years. But yeah, I mean, I would love to, fans who's somebody you'd like to pluck from one promotion and put them in another. I mean, somebody like Hunter James, he's basically everywhere in Georgia. Alexander Leb, somebody else who's also everywhere. Uh, we've not seen Judias in the Augusta promotions. What would Judias look like in Augusta? What would Judias look like in Royston? Can you imagine if Judias showed up at Apocalypse Pro Wrestling on a Friday night?
Yeah, I mean that's a. Yeah, I'm sitting here racking my brain trying to think of others, and I think that's the biggest challenge is, you know, the guys that don't travel as much or whatever.
Uh-huh.
For the longest time, it was CT Keys was a guy for me,
Right?
but
Right?
but he's starting to hit some of the towns and move. Um, look, there's lots of scenarios where I wish Vario Morales was in more places. We talk about that all the time. But where would I want him? Be kind of cool to see him in Viral.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe I'm trying to think of all the other ones, but yeah, I think just because of the, there's a lot of the turnbuckle one fall
Mm-hmm.
that we're like,
Go ahead. Yeah, finish your thought because
yeah,
I think I know
no.
where you're going.
I mean, I think we kind of borderline. I look at maybe I'm not. Look, I'm giving myself way too much credit. I'm saying this, but I felt like we borderline wished the existence of the superstars and Viral, or somewhere
Right.
else, And so, yeah, I think that there's probably a good list of looking through there, of
Yeah. Brady Booker. Brady Booker in Southern Fried. That crowd would go nuts. They wouldn't know what to do with themselves.
they
He would have
absolutely would
such
love him.
energy. Would love to see. Oh yeah. Would love to see the main men uh, tag team different places. So yeah, there's definitely so
It's I've always think about like because of the heat Jack Jameson gets
oh
going to promotions like I could see now. I know they're Ring of Honor and they're AEW, so it makes it a little more complicated. But if you willing to part with your money a little bit, then yeah, can you imagine them in a Viral or a Southern Fried or Southern Honor, some of these others? I'd love to see it. But for the initial gut reaction, obviously it's just because he's so novel that he only really wrestles in one place. Gunner
right.
jumped off the page to that answer, so, for me.
Yeah, pretty good. Anyway, Jake, thanks for the question. Hit us back up. Here's one from Chris in Macon. What matters more to y'all, a great match or a great crowd? Would you rather see a 5-star match with no reaction or a 3-star match with a red hot crowd? Nick, what are your initial thoughts on that question?
This is easy. I mean, to me, this is probably Chris. Appreciate the question. Give me a 3-star match with the red hot crowd. I mean, I make a joke all the time, kind of to tease the segue here for tomorrow's show on the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast. We're doing the Ultimate WrestleMania card. The rules will be all explained and all that kind of stuff on the show. But one of my favorite matches of WrestleMania of all the time. I'm not gonna tell you what it is because it'll probably be on the card. I always tell people, watch that match with no sound. It's atrocious.
Mm-hmm.
Click the volume on. It, to me, is one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time
Mm-hmm.
because the crowd's reaction, and this goes in Georgia as well. We've seen matches that were like, that had no, on paper, if you just saw it, you would be like, well, that's the main event. But then you get there and hear how invested the crowd is and how fired up they are behind it. And you're like, okay, I got it. Makes total sense now. And that's everything. To me, crowd reaction is almost everything. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier about guys worrying about being the best wrestlers in the world, but not worrying about their character and people connecting to them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get it into it, but I had somebody talking about a match on a show that occurred this past weekend, and I saw one probably 2 weeks ago where we had the kind of a very similar conversation of that was probably one of the best matches. This crowd didn't care at all.
Yeah.
It just did not connect to them. They weren't invested into it. And they're like, yeah, if that match happens at X promotion, you know what I mean? Then it's like, it's probably the crowd's going bananas.
The question is it really a 5-star match if it got no reaction? Like if it's really a five
Oh yeah.
star match, then the crowd it's got to compel the crowd. And I think that's where we've gotten I think back to one of my favorite movies growing up was Dead Poet Society. And one of the first things Robin Williams does is they start reading the introduction from J. Everett Pritchard. And he's talking about he's making this scale of poetry and how you rate poetry and what makes good poetry. And he says, rip it out, rip it out. He said, poetry is not something to be graded like this. Poetry is about how it makes you feel. It's about how it makes you dream and it makes you feel alive. And I would say the same thing about wrestling. If you're just rating it, you're like trying to be J. Everett Pritchard, and that's not the whole point of it. The point is, how does this make you feel? How does this compel you? And if you're just looking at the matches like, oh, they did those 17 arm drags they did were perfectly executed, but it didn't make you feel anything. It wasn't compelling. Then it didn't matter. And I think that's the big question is, did this match matter? Did the crowd care? And I think also we are seeing more and we're seeing more and more what we would classify big name matches fought in pretty empty buildings. And then that begs the question. I mean, you and I have said this, well, I wish more people had seen this. And so there's so many factors into what makes a great match. But I think if it's truly a great match, the crowd's going to be hot for it, for sure. Like I don't even know. You and I talked about the Sauronaro Caleb Conley match. I don't know that in the moment the crowd was greatly reacting to it. Because I think they were there maybe to see other things
Correct.
that night. And that was really I don't even know that was a wrestling crowd that night. So yeah, but on another night in front of another crowd would be losing their minds.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. All right. Augusta's been a hot topic. Ricky from Augusta asks us, be honest, are there too many championships in Georgia wrestling right now?
I'm going to answer the question maybe in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Ricky, appreciate the question. At times, there are too many titles in promotions. The problem is, are there too many championships in Georgia? Yes, because there's honestly probably too many promotions in the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
So look, it's great. That is one of the most difficult statements to make because at times I'm always like, yes, but it gives guys it gives them more places to work.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. If they were all good, that would be better.
Yeah.
However, we also talk about our tiers in the past where we're like, look, guys have to have A ball to start, double A to work to, triple A, etc. So you are, I think the biggest obstacle, the only real hiccup that I ever push back with titles about is, could you please stop calling it a world championship? If your title's never left the borders of the state of Georgia, it's not a world title.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, maybe I'm wrong. I know the action title has been defended in another country, so you could start making the case that it is a world title.
Yes.
It actually has left the state of Georgia.
Yes.
So there you go. But I've always said I wished it was name of promotions title. You ready for this? I also wish you would quit calling them heavyweights.
Yeah.
They're, if a guy that's $185 is your heavyweight champion, reevaluate the heavyweight division, I guess.
Yes.
Maybe, or whatever. Look, I admire the fact that, that AWE's doing a junior heavyweight and they're like, hey, they got to be under the weight class. I get it. Because you know what? There's a humorous angle to come for that down the road, I'm sure, where there's, Didn't you remember back in the NWA days they did that? There was like a guy that was like he was over and that, anyway. So I'm not gonna get
Yeah.
into that.
That was a
So
great. That was great. I
yeah.
remember that.
So anyway, so maybe to answer your question is I don't know that there's too many championships. There are unnecessary championships in some places.
Yes.
Um, which I don't. Do we want to go there about? We've had the conversation of just about don't have a women's championship if you're gonna have one woman on the roster and like just the
Right.
rotating. You know, like you get. I think the second you put a women's title in your promotion, then you need to pretty much every show has to have a women's match. Some have to have two.
Yes.
You know, so I always gave props, and everybody, for anybody who says any different, here's my thing: I have always gave props that I felt like IWE probably did the best women's promotion, you know, or women's division across the state.
Bar
They just
none.
did,
Yes.
and so kudos to all involved that were running that because they did it. I feel like they did it the right way.
Yeah. Here's something to think about, and I'll have a question here for you too. R- let's use Royston as an example. Apocalypse. You got the main title. They have the Friday night title, and they have tag team titles. That's about it. You need to have your main title, a secondary title. I like that their secondary title, it's different. Heavyweight title is not defended every show, but that Friday night title, it's literally
Correct.
the Friday night title. And then you have the tag team titles. I don't think, and then you could add a fourth title for a promotion and a women's title. Well, let's say if you got 6 matches on your card, which is a good number of matches. If the titles are defended on every show, and I will say this till I'm blue in the face, if you're only running 6 times a year or once a month, your titles needed to be defended regularly on your shows. So now you're saying
Pause.
60.
I'm going to ask
Yeah.
you. I want to clarify.
Yeah.
6 shows a year. It pretty much has to be every time. Like it's got
Yeah.
to be like 85% of your shows have to have the title defended, or some 80,
Yes.
or something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Ahead,
Yeah, absolutely. Like 6 shows a year, your title should be defended every single show. So now if you got 4 titles, that's taking up a big number of your show. I also think, and this is the question, should you have a title if it's not capable of being the main event on a show? Like Southern Fried, their classics title has been the main event. Heavyweight title,
multiple
obviously.
times. Yeah.
Tag team title's been. Their women's title has not been main event.
Nor will it ever be at this point.
Right.
At the pace it's going.
Right. And so I would say don't have a title unless you know the people you're going to put in there are capable of carrying the main event. Now, I'll also say, let's say you got 3 or 4 titles. What that enables you to do, we were talking about this earlier off air. What that enables you to do now is that gives you 3 or 4 storylines that now you can kind of rotate, and they don't have to be on the same cycle.
Correct.
So now maybe your April show, your secondary title is in your main event picture, and then you're building that the heavyweight title, and then also the tag team, and you can kind of rotate to what's the kind of the face of that show, and then you could build once a quarter. You have your pay-per-view, PLE, whatever they're calling them now. But maybe there's a Patreon where we list all the unnecessary championships in Georgia. But probably not. That's probably not.
Nor should you have a title if it's never defended.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And if you only there's a promotion in North Carolina that literally runs twice a year, and they have a heavyweight title, and I'm like, what? You don't need what in the world? They're definitely not honoring the 60-day rule. One last question, Jason from Savannah. Has any wrestler surprised you this year with how much they've improved, whether in ring or on the mic. Nick, who's kind of jumped out to you this year?
Here's the crazy thing. I'm literally probably going to say a guy that was an award-winning wrestler last year.
Mm-hmm.
My gut reaction immediately pulled Lev.
Yes, I'm
I
right
mean,
there with you.
Alexander Lev. I'm like, look, he's got it. He's an award winner last year, but I'm still like, even in just, we're what, 3 months, 3 full months in now to the day
Mm-hmm.
we're recording, and how I'm like the guy who's gone the most from point, B, because he went from A to B, B to C. If he's from D to E, he's still the speed at which he's getting there. I think is really really been a cool thing to watch.
Yeah, he so far this year hung with Joe Black, which earned the respect of the fans there in Canton. He hung with the NWA World Champion, and then just last week we were talking about his promo at the Jimmy Rave Cup, early front runner for promo of the year. So he continue. I mean, all of
Let's hit
his
the pause
years.
button.
Yeah.
You know what? Ooh, you started rattling off things to talk about with him, and I'm like, wait a minute. So he literally is like everywhere he's at, he's a top guy. He's involved in, we just talked about, he just debuted at Next Level. We'll discuss that on Georgia Wrestling Spotlight. Viral, he's an intricate part of the tag team situation and stuff over there. Southern Honor, he's a player. And down in New Legacy, he's a champion there. He's the champion there, not he's the champion there.
Yeah.
He literally is just being plugged everywhere, all over. And he's not just a promo guy. He won the Jimmy Rave Cup, and he's the junior heavyweight champion there.
Yes.
It's pretty impressive. I mean, like I said, that's why I think it probably most of the time when we get questions and like this, or just I always tell people, most of the times when you're having these conversations, the one that pops to your head the fastest is probably the right answer.
Right. Right. I also think we've talked about this young man a lot. Is Christian Taylor. I would love to see, right now Christian Taylor has, Rick Page in his corner. He's part of that. I would love to see Christian Taylor get more promo opportunities. Same with Luke Da Silva. It seems like, the guy that did win Rookie of the Year, Jay Alpha Miller, has gotten some promo opportunities. So that's what I want to see some of these younger guys get more, promo opportunities to get better at that. But they definitely have improved in ring. But improvement is all about opportunity and getting in front of more and more people. But Lev, could Lev win? I mean, is there a most improved award?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
but how do you go literally male perform and you're still the most improved the next year? It can happen.
Yeah,
it should be able to happen. I get it. I know a lot of people's theories don't my brains don't work like that on that theory, but mine does. Where I'm like, look, you could still be like, if you here's my case on a grander scale. So some of the people, if you were the Intercontinental Champion, and the next year you just skyrocketed in popularity. When Austin went from one tier to the next, and when he became the man and Austin 316, he was already like that the year prior. He was probably the most improved, even though he was one of the biggest stars the year before. You know what I mean? So I'm like, it can happen, I think. But
yes, anyway. yes. Well, let's move on to this week's Power Five, or this month's Power Five. Power Five this week brought to you by Tapped Out Collectibles. Make sure you're checking them out on eBay and wherever you buy your good stuff. Let's start off with the guy we just talked about, and that is Lev. He is being booked as a top guy everywhere he is. Just made his debut at Next Level, booked into the main event picture. I don't want to give away too much before the other show. When you are booked with the booker's wife, that's not a bad spot to be in.
Yeah, when you were handpicked by that person to be brought in. Yeah, you're probably the centerpiece. Maybe not a center, but the centerpiece So it goes back to prove our point we were just discussing.
Yes. And these are in no particular order. These are just the five that we think are having the most influence in Georgia right now. Next, let's talk about Matt Griffin and Action Wrestling. Matt Griffin actually, I'm not sure if he debuted at a new promotion over the weekend, but he continues to pop up everywhere. And Action Wrestling continues. I don't think they're doing a WrestleMania week show this year, but they continue to do stuff in Georgia, in Tennessee. Making waves. They're obviously a big part of the SCI coming up this summer. But Matt Griffin, he's in the mix everywhere.
Uh, Look, he's running. I'm throwing air quotes up. The Kingpin up is running Southern Honor right now. He's accepted Manders' his challenge. He'll be at Southern Fried this weekend. He was at DWA. It's like, yeah, like you're talking about all these different places he's popping up. The other thing is, it's clearly acknowledged that Action is a launching point. That if you're trying to escape the borders of Georgia, Action is a good place to get that because of the IWTV connection and the influence that it helps you shoot out and get more bookings outside of Georgia as well. So it's kind of a lot of there's when we answered that question earlier about like a lot of it was like I'd like to take a guy that I've seen a whole bunch of other places. My gut reaction at one point was I'd like to see this guy wrestle at Action because I think this is a launching point for that he could move beyond Georgia if he would go there and be seen on that scale and jump. That's just But that's why Action / Matt Griffin makes the Power Five.
Yes. I mean, every year they do the Future Showcase as part of the SCI. And it seems like every year they are introducing new people into Georgia wrestling. And sometimes it takes off and those people get booked other places. And sometimes those people just become mainstays at action wrestling. So, going back to one of our listener questions, I think it's about somebody like Adam Priest. I'd love to see Adam Priest be booked in Augusta and different places. He's definitely one of those guys who got his start there in action. Next on the Power Five list, Mr. Carly Bravo. I simply put here, he is the straw that stirs the drink. Wherever he goes, he's either the champion or the tag team champion. And Carly Bravo is good business for your promotion.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, if he's not like one of the two, he's coming in and he's calling out somebody like a J Alpha Mill, like, hey, we're gonna do this and whatever. But at the meantime, he's also wrestling an AJ Francis at AWE this weekend. He's tagged, like you said, dude. Everywhere he goes, he's important, and that's just it. It's and I think slide the curtain hair a little bit. He is also taking other guys and elevating them. Guys are perceived as being more important just by being in a match with Carly Bravo tag team, slash in there with the infantry. This is something I hope people appreciate what's going on. That, look, some people are like, oh, well, why are they doing it? Why are they? Sometimes it is about coming back and elevating others to make the whole entire scene better. The people need to take advantage. I promise you, this opportunity will not be here for forever.
Correct.
Take advantage of it, promoters, bookers, whatever, and talents when you can get this opportunity. Like, this is a really good opportunity, and I wish more people were pulling the trigger on it.
Yes. If you didn't know, fans, we're big fans of Carly Bravo. Uh, Next on the Power Five, Dylan Freimeyer, who basically is the sole person there at Southern Honor with Gary having stepped away, and he's proven worthy of that. He's got to pull double duty this weekend as he's going to be facing off against Gunnar Miller. But also, we mentioned it earlier in the show, his influence in through wrestling with edits is just another way where he is helping people get out there. And I would say, bar none, Dylan is like the number one video editor in Georgia when it comes to telling a story with your video.
I'm going to step that up. It is. I know why. Let me say that. Dylan Freimeyer should be working for NXT, AEW, WWE. Fact. That is just, well, I guess technically, let me back up. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
That's where he should be. He should be making way into the six figures and doing stuff, because he has done stuff, like I said, you have seen on pay-per-views. He's done content. So for some, again, let's repeat what I said about Carly Bravo. If you're not using this resource, that is, and everybody's like, well, the cost. If I have always run real big on, when you, wrestling is a business. You are your product. You are your business. If you can't figure out a way to invest the money into your business, that's the way businesses grow. It's about investing the money. Thinking about the stuff like and I'm not trying to come back to it, but like when I buy comic books and stuff, like I understand, like I have to take a huge risk and invest into these books. I may lose money on it, or I may break even, or but it's like, hey, you got to take those risks. You have to sometimes take those risks. I jokingly say it about the Tapped Out Collectibles comic things. Oh, it's going to cost you $125. If you sell them at $10 a piece, you're going to make $250. You're going to double your money. If you hire a profile wrestler, $15, you're going to do even better. I had one wrestler go, no, I'm going to get $20. I don't care what you sell them for. Make your money. But this scenario with wrestling with edits, make yourself look appealing. This is what Dylan's offering you. Everybody in Georgia probably knows who you are. You don't need Dylan's wrestling with edits for the other promoters in Georgia. They know who you are. The guy in Texas, the guy in California, the guy in, Philadelphia, or, whatever. They don't know you. There's nothing better. If I was a promoter and I'm sitting in Pennsylvania or New York or whatever, that video with Bryce Cannon that Dylan did for him, I'm probably going like, because he looks professional. Like they get it. He's invested in himself, and they're like, this is a pro wrestler. And there's a huge difference to me between an independent wrestler and a professional pro wrestler.
Yes.
And that's what he's offering you. He is offering you something you can't, at a talent level that is insane. That I know it. I'm banging this drum. I really wish more people took advantage of this.
Yeah.
Figure out a way to get it paid for.
Yes. Something. It's just as important as getting good gear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're wrestling in penny loafers, you probably don't need to pay for Dylan to do this video for you. Yeah. If you're wrestling in gym shorts, you probably don't need to get him to, because he's going to make a diamond look even better, but he's not going to be able to polish a turd. Is that safe to say? Am I allowed to say that on the air? Anyway, but yeah, more people need to do that. And then finally on this month's Power 5, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling / One Fall Wrestling. That transition is happening. This Friday night is the final Turnbuckle show. They'll be transitioning to One Fall Wrestling. Why are they on here? Simply a couple things. The number of shows that they are booking this year, basically every weekend, and some weekends multiple shows. The opportunities that they are giving young talents to get out there, to get reps. I mean, if you are part of their roster, you can just work for them and get more reps than 75% of Georgia just working for One Fall. And then from the fans' perspectives, they are able to book people. We'll talk about on the other show. They're able to book people you're not going to see at any other independent show, maybe even in the country, because of the relationships they have. And so they have a power, they have an influence that in some ways is unmatched in Georgia.
There, and it's across the board. Um, why? Because they you have more opportunity. They book more people. Now a lot of people are like, "Hey, well, reach out to them," because now they are expanding out that roster a little bit. You're starting to see some new people be. They're giving some guys some opportunities. There's a lot of people that I'm surprised at some of the people on the card, and then I'm like, "Hey, they fit it." They're a teaching promotion. That's essentially what I tell people. But they're only teaching you by putting you out there with some of the best.
Mm.
And I just think, look, we know the transition is happening, but nothing's going to miss a beat. I think we're just going to see the name change, but the machine will continue to roll. And like you said, just the sheer volume of shows they're putting on. I've heard rumor there's going to be some more coming.
More? How can? Wow, 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 wow. Um, anyway, that is this month's Power Five. That's one thing we're doing on the Tapped In Indie Show is Power Five, the hot hand, the underrated, overrated, and then the champions talk. Don't forget, fans, if you want to see the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight each and every week, you're going to need to head over to patreon.com/tapped-out-pod. That is where it is located exclusively for free. It's absolutely free to create an account to get that show. However, it's at the paid level. You're going to get the show notes. You're going to see the fan questions we didn't get to this week, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be perhaps a weekly theme. Also, Patreon's where you can send us fan questions. There are a lot of things that probably deserve a Patreon. You never know when you're going to get that extra special interview. You're going to get early access to all of the shows. Speaking of all the shows, uh, any insight into what you and Myron are going to be discussing this week on the Tapped Out show?
Yeah, I teased it a little bit before. Obviously, we'll kind of catch up on some of the a lot of people I got a lot of grief about my comments last week that I've kind of been underwhelmed for the WrestleMania build so far.
Mm.
The crowds have been spectacular overseas, but the actual material that they're working with, I just have been I wasn't saying nothing of it was good. I just felt a little underwhelmed. I was expecting more. So I'll share my feedback to the feedback, and we'll discuss a little bit of what happened on Raw with Cody and John Cena this week to see if they changed my mind. But the big part of the show this week, the special feature, as far as we do, is the Ultimate WrestleMania card. I'll quickly synopsis up so you people that are listening have a chance to kind of wrap your head around the rules. The rules are simple. So the card's not going to be the same as we did this in the past, and it did change up a little bit because I was like, so no wrestler can wrestle twice.
Mm-hmm.
It'd actually be an actual match that occurred at WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
And when I said every title, it gets a little convoluted now because there's so many titles. Basically, I said I merged the tag belts into one belt. So there's just the men's tag team. There is a women's tag team. It hasn't been around long, but in my head, I was like, hey, it's at least got to be around for 5 years. It met that criteria, so I begrudgingly put it into the system. The men's Intercontinental and the men's United States titles were involved, and then I did a women's championship. And then it gets complicated when it comes to the world titles. I did the big gold, the World Heavyweight Championship, which is now obviously the one that Gunther has. Kind of, I've transitioned over there. And then it's also, I did the WWE Universal kind of in the same vein. Like that was the same title, is the way I treated it in that. So, and then you're allowed one attraction match that wasn't a title. But remember, the big rules were a wrestler can't wrestle twice. That does make it a little more complex when you're putting it together. So that'll be fun. That'll be, we're going to go over that. That's the main thing for this week, because we're trying to kind of do the same thing as you probably noticed between the two shows. Here we do Power 5, underrated, underappreciated, champions, and the hot hand. There we're doing all the what ifs. We're doing top 10. We're doing, some other stuff. And this is kind of our wild card, our ultimate card show. So it's different, but hopefully you guys, we're trying to get it where you're more engaged and you can kind of send your opinions and your list and stuff in and hear those. I appreciate the ones that we got last week. We'll discuss some of that tomorrow as well.
Well, it is always great to talk not just independent wrestling, but wrestling in general. And fans, the best way to support independent wrestling is to get out and buy a ticket. We are so grateful that you've listened to this week's edition of the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. And maybe, just maybe, if you get out and buy a ticket, you look around, you see a couple of handsome devils looking right at you, and we'll see you at the matches.